Hello folks, IPMAT. Anyone who's thinking about IPMAT, you're thinking about GIPMAT, Rohtak and Indore, 3 different exams. Course from 2 IM starts on March 31, 6 hours per day, big sprint till April 21 and then a bunch of mocks. Sign up, best wishes.
All right, let's discuss this passage which was about air pollution. Now remember one thing in IPMAT, you will never have RCs with titles. Okay, this title I've just added for my reference. In the exam, your RC will never have a title. All right, so just ignore that. Recently, India was in the news again as a world leader, but this time for the wrong reason. Okay, that's not good. According to the Swiss firm IQAir's assessment of the air quality of world cities 2023, New Delhi is back to being the world's most polluted capital. New Delhi's annual air quality rating is 19 times the World Health Organization's annual limit recommended in 2021 for its pollutant level. So the air pollution is very high. Now, when you're reading the passage, keep talking to yourself. All right. So till now, what has the author said? The author has mentioned this assessment, which is IQAir's assessment, and said that New Delhi is back to being the world's most polluted capital, and its air pollution levels are very high. The picture is no better as far as the larger union territory of Delhi is considered. Its annual record of pollutant levels makes it the third most polluted region globally. So it's not just New Delhi as the capital, but Delhi as the union territory also is very polluted. The whole region is very polluted. Okay. Now, what you should do in RCs is you should read, whenever you read a paragraph, just pause for a quick few seconds and extract the main point of the paragraph in your head. Okay, you can either extract it in your head, you can make a mental note, or you can write it down. All right. Now, if mental notes are enough for you, just extract a mental note. But if you think that your comprehension is not that great, then feel free to take written notes. Yes, it will take extra time, but it will definitely improve your comprehension. All right. Okay. So what is the main point of this paragraph? It's a pretty straightforward paragraph. It mentions a report or it mentions an assessment and says that India is being the globe. India's coming out as a global leader of pollution, and then specifically it talks about New Delhi being the most polluted capital, and also Delhi as a region also being very polluted. Okay, that's the main point of the first paragraph. Let's continue. Delhi may have hogged the headlines on air pollution, but the problem is far from unique to metropolises. So it's not just unique to metros. It's you can infer from the statement that the problem seems to be spread across India, and it's not just limited to metros. IQAir's findings reveal that even lower tier cities and towns in India are choking because of very poor air quality. Indeed, Begusarai in Bihar is the world's most polluted city. Okay, so it's not just limited to Delhi. It's not just limited to metros. The problem is prevalent in lower tier cities and towns in India as well. And then mentions that Begusarai, which is a city in Bihar, has come out as the world's most polluted city in the same assessment. Partly industrialized, housing among others an oil refinery, Begusarai is primarily agrarian. That means it's based on agriculture. The economy is based on agriculture. And Begusarai is not an outlier. Mulanpur in Punjab, which is transitioning to an urban settlement, and Siwan in Bihar are among the 42 Indian cities or towns that are among the 50 most polluted globally. Now, this is a startling statistic. 42 out of the 50 cities in that assessment belong to India in terms of pollution. So what is the main point of this paragraph? The main point of this paragraph is that it's not just the problem of air pollution is not just limited to metros. It has trickled down to smaller cities, lower tier cities and towns as well. And then the paragraph talks about Begusarai and also gives you a very startling statistic that 42 among the top 50 most polluted towns or cities in the world, 42 in that top 50 list belong to India. So that means this problem is pan-India. Air pollution levels are really high across India. All right. Many judicial pronouncements have upheld the right to clean air as a corollary to the fundamental right to life and pushed governments to act. Now, here you might have come across an unfamiliar word. You might not know what corollary is. But again, I always say this to my students, when you come across an unfamiliar word in the RC, don't fixate on that word. It's not important to understand each and every word. It's not important to know the meaning of each and every word. You should always keep your focus on the main idea. One word is not going to make a difference, most likely. So you might not know what corollary is, but try to understand it from context. See, what does the statement say? Many judicial pronouncements have upheld the right to clean air. The right to clean air. That means every human being has a right to clean air. as a corollary to the fundamental right to life and pushed governments to act. See, the right to clean air, from this statement, you can make out that the right to clean air is related to the fundamental right to life. We all have a right to life, right? We all have a right to live. So as part of the right to live, you have the right to clean air. You can understand that from context. So you might not know what corollary is, and I'll explain that word in the end. But the right to clean air, you can infer here that the right to clean air seems to be a part of the right to life. Okay. But Delhi's bad air is despite the introduction of CNG in public transport and the building of metro network in the earlier years of this decade. And in spite of the presence of a graded response action plan, GRAP, that kicks in when the air quality turns bad and becomes more stringent as the air quality worsens. Now, what is the main point of this paragraph? New Delhi has a number of initiatives, that they have implemented, the government there has implemented to combat air pollution. We're talking about introduction of CNG in public transport. We're talking about a metro network. We're talking about graded response action plan, GRAP, that kicks in when air quality turns bad. But in spite of this, the air pollution levels are still high, very high. In spite of this, New Delhi has come out as the most polluted capital city in the world. Okay, so the Delhi seems to have taken quite a few measures, but still the air pollution levels in New Delhi remains to be very high. That's the main point of the third paragraph. Improving air quality across Indian cities requires three fundamental changes. Okay, now the author is giving you solutions. The author has mentioned a problem so far, which is the very high air pollution in India, across India. Now the author says, gets into solutioning phase. Improving air quality across Indian cities requires three fundamental changes. One, governments must turn to science to understand, measure, and monitor the problem. Okay, so take a scientific approach. Two, they have to understand that the response will have to include behavioral changes, okay, excuse me, and use a combination of incentives and penalties to achieve this. Okay, so that's the second suggestion that the author has. And three, clean air has to be seen as a common public good. To be sure, it's not just the responsibility of the center or a battle for courts to wage, but a fight that states and municipal governments have to be a part of. This is a battle for our future. So the author has three parts, says that if India wants to fix or improve the air quality, there are three fundamental changes that are required. One is a scientific approach. Second is behavioral changes, including incentives and penalties. And third, it has to be seen as a common public good, and it has to be a responsibility which is shared, not just of the central government or the courts, but also the states and the municipal government. So the last paragraph is obviously very important, where the author talks about solution and gives suggestions. All right. Okay, so it's not a very difficult paragraph, okay, by IPMAT standards, fairly manageable paragraph to understand. Now, for every RC that you read, once you've read the RC, you've extracted the main point of each paragraph. That helps you maintain the flow of the content. In the end, you should always extract the main idea. So pause for 30 seconds after reading the RC, extract the main idea in your head or write it down if the mental note doesn't work for you, and then go to the questions. This approach you should follow for every RC. So what's the main idea of this RC? Now look at it holistically. Main idea doesn't mean main point 1 plus main point 2 plus main point 3 plus main point 4. No, it's not math. It doesn't work like that. So look at the passage holistically. What is the passage talking about? Think about it. The passage is definitely focusing on air pollution in India, right? The passage says that there is an assessment called the IQ Air Assessment, which talks about how air pollution in India is very, very high. Then it gives you the example of New Delhi and Begusarai to illustrate the problem that is pan-India, the problem of high air pollution across India. So the main idea, if you think about it, the structure has a problem and then has a solution. So the problem is the air pollution levels. My writing is horrible. I have the main idea on the next slide, but just bear with me for now. Air pollution levels in India, which are very high, gives you the example of Delhi and Begusarai. I think that's an important point to note. And the solution has a three changes, fundamental changes that the author proposes. One is scientific approach. Second is behavioral changes and a combination of incentives and penalties. And third, clean air to be seen as a common public good. This combined is the main idea of the RC. So you should always extract the main idea in your head. Okay, I'll show you the main idea now. and then we'll go to the question. Once we're done with the questions, I'll come back to corollary or any other unfamiliar words. Okay, the reason I'm leaving that for later is I want to make you understand that it's not important to know the meaning of each and every word. Okay, we tried to understand that word by context. We were fairly successful. That's fine. In the end, we'll try to improve the vocabulary. So next time, if it comes up, you should know the word. Okay, excuse me. So this is the main idea. This is the, sorry about that. This is the problem. Okay, India's air pollution levels are very high. According to IQAir's assessment of air quality, New Delhi is the most polluted capital city in the world. And then I've mentioned about Begusarai and also the startling statistic of 42 Indian cities or towns being among the top 50. So this is the first part of the part of the main idea, which is the problem. And then you've got the solution, which is the 3 fundamental changes. All right. Our words don't have to match, but we should be on the same page as far as the main idea is concerned. Now we've extracted the main idea. Let's go to the questions. Okay. And when we're solving questions, we'll come back to specific portions of the passage if required to confirm or figure out the answer. Excuse me. All right. Let's look at question 1. Based on the information in the passage, who has endorsed the right to clean air? Now, what does endorsed mean? Supported or approved. Okay, so based on the information in the passage, who has endorsed the right to clean air? Now, if you've read the passage effectively, you'll get a trigger that right to clean air was mentioned somewhere. Okay, somewhere in the second half or the third paragraph, you should get a trigger if you've read it effectively. Okay, now let's go back to the second paragraph. Even we won't look at the options also. What we'll do is we'll try to create a shadow answer in our head. That's a very good strategy. See, shadow answer is an answer that you create in your head after looking at the question, but before looking at the options. So you look at the question, you create a shadow answer in your head by going back to specific portions in the RC, and then you look at the options and try to match it with the shadow answer. Once you have a shadow answer in your head, the options won't confuse you as much because you have some sense of direction. If you look at the options directly, they might confuse you a lot. So wherever possible, try to create a shadow answer. So I haven't read the options. Let's create a shadow answer. Who has endorsed the right to clean air? If you go to the third paragraph, it says, many judicial pronouncements have upheld the right to clean air in double quotes as a corollary to the fundamental right to life and pushed governments to act. So who is approving, supporting, or endorsing the right to clean air, according to the statement? It says many judicial pronouncements. What does judicial pronouncements mean? It's connected to law. It's connected to courts. Okay, so the law has endorsed the right to clean air. Okay, all right. So we have some sort of a shadow answer. Let's go back. Now let's look at the options. The government. That's not the correct answer. We just saw that it's the law. It's the courts that have done that. So government is not the correct answer. Second one clearly says courts. Aha, so let's park it. Of course, we're not going to, excuse me, we're not going to immediately, we can't mark this as a correct answer because we haven't looked at the next two options, but court seems like a very likely answer, so we'll park it. The media, no, the media is not mentioned, so we can exclude it. Parliament also is not mentioned in the context of right to clean air, so we can exclude this as well. The answer is indeed courts. Okay, so you can see that if you create some sort of a shadow answer, it will not be possible always to create a shadow answer, but wherever possible, create it. It will help you to solve the questions in a better way. Okay, so your answer is definitely quotes, and I've given you the evidence. Let's go to question 2. In the last sentence of the passage, this is the battle for our future, in double quotes, the writer is. Now the question stem has something in double quotes. That means this has been directly lifted from the passage. All right. And the author does mention that towards the end. This is the battle for our future. That's the last statement in the passage, right? So what this question is asking is, why has the author mentioned that? Excuse me. I have a nasty cough. Apologies for that. So, basically the question is asking, why has the author mentioned this is the battle for our future in the last sentence? Again, create a shadow answer. Quickly go back and try to understand why has the author said this. See, the author is talking about solutions here. And then the author says, to be sure, it's not just a responsibility. Okay, this is fine. Gives the solutions and says, this is the battle for our future. Now, why is the author saying this? Think about it. The author is calling it the battle for our future. That means the author is highlighting that this is a serious problem that needs to be solved. Our future depends on this problem. Our future depends on solving this problem, on fixing the air pollution problem in the world. That's what the author is calling it, the battle for our future. So it's really highlighting the need to solve this problem or highlighting the importance of solving this problem, right? That's what the author is saying. So that's a shadow answer. Let's go back. So the writer is projecting a bleak future for India. Now, this might be an attractive option, but think about it. Is the author being pessimistic there? Is the author saying that, oh, this problem is going to be incredibly difficult to solve? There's no hope. Our future is dark. Is the author implying that? No. The author is not being pessimistic there. The author is highlighting the importance of solving this problem and probably encouraging us to solve this problem. So projecting a bleak future for India, that's not what the author is doing. That's not the tone of the author, tone and tenor. The author is not being negative or pessimistic. So this we can ignore. Being melodramatic. Is the author being melodramatic? What is melodramatic? Melodramatic is drama. Is the author being drama? Like unnecessarily emotional? Melodramatic is that, right? Unnecessarily emotional. What you see in like soaps, soap operas, or these Ekta Kapoor shows. I don't know if you folks see that. Probably your generation doesn't, right? And a good you don't see that. But I mean, authors can be melodramatic as well. Unnecessarily emotional. But the author is not being unnecessarily emotional, right? If you think about it, the author's being quite, the author's presenting data, highlighting the problem, and then giving you a solution. The author's not being emotional here, all right? So this is not the answer. Being ambivalent. Now here it's a little tricky. You should know what the meaning of ambivalent is. If you don't, then this question becomes tricky, right? So ambivalent means, and add this to your vocabulary, you should look up the meaning in the dictionary later as well. Ambivalent means having mixed feelings. Okay, being on the fence. Neither here nor there, being on the fence, having mixed feelings. Is the author having mixed feelings about air pollution? No, the author is very clear. Excuse me. This is a big problem for India and India needs to solve it. So there's no ambivalence there. The author is very sure about their opinion. Emphasizing the need to fight for clean air. Now relate this to your shadow answer. Of course, the shadow answer is not going to be exact, but the shadow answer was that the author is highlighting the importance of this problem, highlighting the importance of fixing this problem, right? Which is similar to saying emphasizing the need to fight for clean air. That's what the author is trying to convey when the author says this is the battle of our future. So this is indeed the correct answer. Okay, it's an inference-based question. Completely depends on your comprehension. But yeah, if you didn't know the meaning of ambivalent, this question becomes risky. So my suggestion would be, if you don't know the meaning of a word in the exam, okay, see, if it comes in the passage, like corollary, we can try to understand it through context. But if it's a part of a question, then it becomes a problem. So then you should be careful before attempting this question. So if you don't know the meaning of ambivalent, either you leave this question or you look at 4 and say, I am 99% sure that this is the answer. Then you can take a risk and still attempt the question. So either you leave it, don't take a risk, or if you're very sure, almost 99% sure that 4 is the correct answer, then you can take a risk and mark 4. Okay, but yeah, leaving it is also a good choice when you don't understand a particular word in the question itself, to avoid those negative marks. Okay, definitely add this word to your vocabulary. All right, let's look at question 3. Based on the information in the passage, which one of the following statements is correct? That means there are 3 incorrect statements in the question and only 1 is correct. Our job is to pick the statement which is correct. Okay, understand the question very well. Don't make a silly mistake here. 3 are incorrect, 1 is correct, and our job is to pick the one which is correct. All right, let's look at option 1. The problem of air pollution is limited to the major cities in India. Now, does the RC say that? Be careful. Always go back and check specific portions. Okay, these are detailed statements. So you should always go back and check specific portions. Now, in the passage clearly says, it starts by talking about Delhi and New Delhi and then Delhi as a union territory. But then it says Delhi may have hogged the headlines on air pollution, but the problem is far from unique to metropolises. IQAir's findings reveal that even lower tier cities and towns in India are choking because of very poor air quality. And then it talks about Begusarai. So the problem is not just limited to cities. Even lower tier cities and towns in India have this problem. And then it says 42 Indian cities or towns are among the 50 most polluted. So there's clear evidence which tells us that the problem of air pollution is not limited to the major cities in India. It's not limited to just metros. It has trickled down to lower tier cities and towns as well. There's clear evidence. So this statement is incorrect. Our job is to pick the correct statement. Remember that. Okay. The 50 most polluted cities in the world are in India. Now be careful with this. Is this correct? This option is saying the 50 most, read the options very carefully. 50 most polluted cities in the world are in India. Is that true? No. 42 out of 50 are in India. That's what it says. Are among the 42 Indian cities or towns that are among the 50 most polluted globally. That means 42 out of 50 are in India. 50 most polluted cities in the world, 42 out of those 50 are in India. So this option is saying the 50 most polluted cities in the world are in India. No, that's wrong. Only 42 out of 50 are in India. So be careful, read the options carefully, and please go back and check specific portions of the passage. If you rely on your memory, you'll make mistakes. Delhi's air quality is the poorest in the entire world. Now, this may seem like a very attractive option, but is that what the passage is saying? Is the passage saying Delhi's air quality is the poorest in the entire world? What does this option imply? That Delhi is the most polluted place in the entire world. Is that what the passage is saying? Let's go back and check. Excuse me. It says New Delhi is back to being the most polluted capital. Among capitals, New Delhi is the most polluted capital. This is different from saying it's the most polluted place in the world. Among capitals, New Delhi is the most polluted. And that's New Delhi. The option is talking about Delhi. About Delhi, what does the RC say? The picture is no better as far as the large union territory of Delhi is considered. Its annual record of pollutant levels makes it the third most polluted region globally. Delhi is the third most polluted region globally, not the topmost. And there's a difference between Delhi and New Delhi. All right. So be careful, come back and check. Delhi's air quality is not the poorest in the entire world, according to the RC. Delhi is the third most polluted region. And New Delhi is the most polluted capital, which is different from what the option is saying. So tricky one, can be a tricky one, but this is eliminated. We're looking for the correct option. Now, fourth should be the correct option. Let's see. Industrialization makes Begusarai the most polluted city in the world. Now, we know that the RC has spoken about Begusarai. It also says that Begusarai is the most polluted city in the world. We'll go back and check. The option says industrialization makes it the most polluted city in the world. Let's go and check. We should always check for evidence or proof. It says, indeed, Begusarai in Bihar is the world's most polluted city. So this part is correct. Now, what makes it the world's most polluted city? Partly industrialized, housing among others an oil refinery, Begusarai is primarily agrarian. From this statement, you can infer that industrialization is one of the major reasons of it being the most polluted city. It's not clearly mentioned there. The author doesn't explicitly mention it, but you can infer it. The author is saying it's the most polluted city. And then it's saying it's partly industrialized, excuse me, and it houses, among others, an oil refinery. Why will the author mention this? The author is mentioning this because this is one of the major reasons for it being the most polluted city. So yes, industrialization is indeed the major reason, or you can say one of the major reasons. Here it says industrialization makes Begusarai the most polluted city in the world. This is correct. Okay. Now, if you were confused, you would have thought to yourself that the passage doesn't say industrialization is the only reason, but that's not what the option is saying, right? The option is saying industrialization makes Begusarai the most polluted city in the world. It is a reason. It's not saying it's the only reason, but it is a reason. It is a factor responsible for the pollution in Begusarai, and that's what the RC is also saying. So this option is definitely correct, and we are looking for the correct option or correct statement, and therefore this is the answer. Okay, this can be tricky question if you don't go back and check. So always in such questions, always whenever you're extracting an inference, go and look for evidence. Go and reread specific portions of the passage. Don't rely on your memory and confirm your answers. So either go and figure it out or confirm your answers. Had you not done that, you might have made a mistake with this because it's a detail. You might have made a mistake with this, right? So always go back and check specific portions of the passage. All right. So the answer is 4. Let's look at question 4. The first sentence in the passage mentions that India was in the news again as a world leader. What is the writer's intention in pointing this out? So basically the question is asking, why did the author say that India is in the news again as the world leader? Again, try and create a shadow answer. Okay, so we have to understand why has the author said this. We have to go behind the scenes and understand the why. So these questions can be a little tricky because you have to really understand the purpose of the author writing it. Okay, the literal statement might say something, but try to understand the purpose behind it. So let's go back. Recently, India was in the news again as a world leader, but this time for the wrong reason. So obviously, the author is not praising India here, right? And it says, then the author talks about how New Delhi is the most populated capital. Delhi is the third most polluted region, and so on and so forth. So clearly, here the author is not being positive. The author is being negative here, right? Because the author says was in the news again as a world leader, but this time for the wrong reason. So clearly, the author is being negative here and not positive. So that's our shadow answer. Let's go back to the question. The first sentence in the passage mentions that India was in the news again as a world leader. What's the writer's intention in pointing this out? From the shadow answer, we know that the author is being negative. To create confusion. No. Confusion can also be negative, but that's not the author's intention. The author is not creating confusion. The author is very clear about what they're saying. To be critical, right? Criticism. Is the author criticizing India? Yes, right? The author is definitely criticizing India. And here, see, critical also just simply doesn't mean criticism. Yes, the author is definitely criticizing, but the author in that paragraph and also in the RC, you've seen that the author mentions data, right? Gives you clear supporting data to substantiate their point that India has high pollution levels, right? So yes, it is, the author is being critical, but not critical just for the heck of it. The author is also providing you like concrete data and backing it up. So this can be the right answer. We'll park it because we haven't seen the other options. To be negative, yes, this can be the right option as well. We'll park it because author is definitely negative. Right, option 4 says to be judgmental. Now, we have to understand what judgmental means. See, judgmental is also criticizing someone. But in case, when the person is being judgmental, they often don't have any rational or concrete data to back up their criticism. They're just criticizing for the sake of it. Okay. So for instance, let's say if I'm conducting a class and a student is nodding off, a student is sleeping in my class, I can pass a judgment and I can say the student is lazy. But then I'm being very quick to criticize, right? Maybe the student has a health issue. Maybe the student is not feeling well. Okay. Maybe the student couldn't sleep at night because of some genuine reason, right? There can be a number of reasons, right? They're not feeling well. They had they're going through some health issues. There can be a number of reasons as to why the student has fallen asleep. Yes, they could be lazy as well, but I shouldn't be so quick to judge, right? Branding them as lazy simply because they were nodding off to sleep in one class is not good on my part. So here I'm being judgmental because I don't have enough data and I don't have enough rationale to back up my decision. I'm being overly critical and I'm being too quick to criticize. That's judgmental. Okay, that's not good. Now you have to ask yourself, is the author being critical or is the author being judgmental? The author is not being judgmental. When the author is criticizing India, the author is giving you data. The author is giving you enough data. The author has mentioned the assessment, talked about New Delhi, talked about Begusarai, talked about 42 out of 50 cities being. So there's enough data with the author is giving to back up their statement that India has indeed very high air pollution levels. So the author is definitely not being judgmental. We can eliminate this. Definitely look up judgmental and make it a part of your vocabulary, but here the author is not being judgmental. All right. Now, is the author being critical or is the author being negative? Sorry. There are two options here. Is the author being critical or is the author being negative? It's a little tricky, this question. Now you have to look at both the options seem correct, but which is better? 2 is better than 3 here. You always have to pick the best option. Between 2 and 3, 2 is better because 3 is very generic. Yes, the author is being negative, but very specifically speaking, the author is being critical about India. The author is criticizing it based on concrete data. So 2 is definitely a better answer than being negative. Negative is too generic. And the negative can also be perceived as somebody simply being negative for the heck of it. But that's not what the author is doing. The author is giving you data and also giving you solutions. So the author is really analyzing the situation. So that's why critical is a much better answer. So the answer here is critical. This is a tricky question. Okay. If in the exam, don't take an inordinate amount of risk. Okay. You should be at least 80% or at least 70% sure of your answer. Right. So if in a situation you're not 70 or 80% sure of your answer, then leave that question. Okay. This is a question, if you got it wrong, ask yourself, did you take a lot of risk, unnecessary risk? Right? Because this is a tricky question. But the answer is definitely critical because it's the best representation and much more specific than negative. Which of the following points is not made? Okay, let's look at question 5. Which of the following points is not made by the writer? Now again, read this carefully. If you miss this not, then you'll get the question wrong. That's why it's very important to read the questions and options slowly. Which of the following points is not made by the writer? That means 3 points are made, 3 out of 4. 1 is not made, and our job is to pick the one which is not made. All right? Okay. Governments at all levels should be involved in tackling the problem of air pollution. Always go back and check specific portions. Now, where did the author talk about this? The author spoke about this somewhere in the last paragraph, right? The author does say, let's go back. Excuse me, I'm just going to remove this. The author does say that, and 3, clean air has to be seen as a common public good. To be sure, it's not just the responsibility of the center or a battle of courts to wage, but a fight that states and municipal governments have to be a part of. So the author is clearly saying that governments at all levels should be involved in tackling this problem. Excuse me. This is made by the writer in that passage. Remember, we're looking for not made. If such a question is confusing you, on a notepad, write 3 made, 1 not made, encircle not made to make sure that you're looking for that answer. We're looking for a point which is not made. So hence, this is not our answer. Okay. Clean air is the right of every consumer. Okay. Now, we have the passage does talk about right to clean air. Okay. Does the passage say that the clean air is the right of every consumer? What is a consumer? Consumer is when you're buying something. Okay. In an economy, when you're buying something, you become a consumer, a product or a service. Does the passage say that clean right is the right of every consumer? Consumer is different from citizen. Remember that. Okay. See, it says many judicial pronouncements have upheld the right to clean air as a corollary to the fundamental right to life and pushed governments to act. And then it talks about some other things, but nowhere has the passage mentioned consumer, or consumer is not implied in the passage anywhere. The passage is not talking about consumers. The passage is talking about citizens of the country. Consumer has not been mentioned or implied anywhere. So that is a flaw in that option. Okay. And you have to be very careful. That's why read the options very carefully. It says clean air is the right of every consumer. This part is not implied anywhere. So I'm going to park this. Excuse me. Because we're looking for an option which is a point not made by the writer. Let's look at number 3. Scientific methods are needed to address the problem of air pollution. In the final paragraph, the author does say that. And go back and quickly reread that specific portion. Governments must turn to science to understand, measure, and monitor the problem. So this point is made by the writer in the passage. So there's not an answer. Polluting behavior should be punished. Again, go back to the last paragraph. Be careful. It can be inferred because the author says, 2, they have to understand that the response will have to include behavioral changes and use a combination of incentives and penalties to achieve this. Penalties is punishment. So this is implied in the passage. And therefore, it's not the answer. The only point which is not made by the writer in the passage is clean air is the right of every consumer, because the consumer part is not implied anywhere. Okay, so read it carefully and always go back and check for evidence. This is the answer. It's also a slightly tricky question. All right, let's look at question 6. The phrase that kicks in, again, double quotes, that means it's mentioned in the passage. Para 3, they've given you the para as well, means what? Now, see, if you know the meaning of the phrase, this becomes very easy. But if you don't know the meaning of the phrase, still you should try this question. So go back and create a shadow answer first. Okay, let's understand in what context has that kicks in been mentioned. Okay, it says third paragraph. So here it says, but Delhi's bad air is despite the introduction of CNG in public transport. Okay, and in spite of the presence of a graded response action plan GRAP, that kicks in when the air quality turns bad and becomes more stringent as the air quality worsens. GRAP is an action plan, graded response action plan that kicks in. And when does it kick in? When the air quality turns bad. Now understand what the author is saying here. Delhi has this action plan which kicks in when the air quality turns bad. So the moment the air quality turns bad, they bring this plan into existence, or they start executing this plan. Okay, so it's like an emergency plan, a crisis plan, that they have it ready. The moment the air quality turns bad, they implement that plan. That's what kicks in means. It gets implemented when the air quality turns bad. Okay, so that you can even understand it from the context. So even if you don't know the meaning, you can try and guess it through context. For that, you'll have to come back and read the sentence and then go back. You've created a shadow answer. Now let's see if you can pick a relevant answer here. So it means gets rejected? No. Gains importance. Does it mean gains importance? Does the plan gain importance when the air quality worsens? No, it is implemented. That is not same as gaining importance. Causes violence? Absolutely not. Comes into force. Comes into forces, comes into existence, comes into being, implemented. That's what comes into force means. So if you know the phrase, this is a very easy question, but still I think you can go back, check the context and try to answer this question. Okay, but now you should definitely, now since you've solved the question, you should definitely make it a part of your vocabulary. The answer is comes into force. All right. Okay, great. So let's look at this passage as a whole. Now, this passage, as far as the content, and I'll tell you what the meaning of corollary is as well. The passage as a whole, the content of the passage is manageable. In terms of questions, I think one is, I would say, medium question. Two is, I would say, okay, it's again, I think this is slightly difficult. Three is medium to difficult. Four is slightly difficult. Five, I think, is medium to difficult, and six is medium, right? So out of 6 questions, I think 4 are definitely questions that can be attempted and you could have gotten it right. 2 are on the trickier side, so you have to be careful. So again, do your question selection properly. Just because you've read a passage doesn't mean you have to attempt each and every question. Okay, if a question is very tricky for you, if you're not even 70% sure of your answer, feel free to leave that question. Okay, don't blindly attempt all questions just for the heck of it. So I think 4 out of 6 are manageable questions in this passage. So if you got, like, let's say 4 right, that's good performance. If you got 5 right, that's very good performance. 6 is, of course, excellent. All right. Okay, let's look at the meaning of corollary now. Please add this to your vocabulary as well. So look it up in the dictionary later. See, it says many judicial pronouncements have upheld the right to clean air as a corollary to the fundamental right to life and pushed governments to act. So corollary simply means that right to clean air is a result of right to life. Okay, so when A is a result of B, we say that A is a corollary of B. Okay, A is there as a result of B. Right to clean air is there as a result of right to life. So you have right to life, okay, which is an umbrella right, and right to clean air is a part of that, okay, or is as a result of that. Okay, so when A is as a result of B, we say A is a corollary of B. Right to clean air is a corollary to the fundamental right of life. Okay, look it up in the dictionary and make it a part of your vocabulary. But as I said, this word could be understood through context as well. Okay.